Welcome everyone to Changing of the Hip Hop Guards. It's me, Uncle E. That's my partner, the journalist Sincere. And today we have, I don't even know how to describe this man. He wears a lot of different hats, very important to the culture of hip hop, the Graf world, MCing. I mean, you name it, this guy has done it and is still doing it. We have none other than Keo.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us, fam.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. So Keo, man, before we get deep into your history and what you're currently working on, if you could do us a favor and take us back a little bit to where you were born and raised, and how was it for you growing up as a kid?
I'm gonna give you a nugget I never gave anyone, but I'm about to do my whole autobiography. So I was ashamed of this when I was a kid because my older brother is born in New York. My younger sister's born in New York. I'm the middle child. I happened to be born in Kansas City, Missouri, because my father was working out there. But we moved back to Brooklyn before I was 6 months old. So I don't remember Kansas City. I don't relate to Kansas City. But if you look at my birth certificate, I'm not a native New Yorker. So I don't have the right to say born and bred in Brooklyn. I was just bred in Brooklyn. And I used to be ashamed of that. And then I remember one year when I was a kid, I saw on the news, because I thought Kansas City was the Wizard of Oz, cornfield. Right?
Okay,
I saw on the news that it was the murder capital of the United States. And then I started bragging, yeah, I'm from KC. I got the hat and everything. That's how twisted I was growing up.
Nah, no doubt, no
Anyway.
doubt. Well, hey, listen, man, Rakim said it as well, too, man. It ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. You know what I mean? Hey, and look, you got people like what, DJ Premier, right? We didn't know until later on that he wasn't from Brooklyn, right? So
him and Guru
and
both
Guru.
came, may rest in peace, came to Fort Greene, Bed-Stuy, and probably repped it better than a lot of people born and bred there.
For sure, for sure. So when you guys, at 6 months, you said you came to New York. Where were you in New York?
We moved to the corner of Dean and Nevins, which right now is probably $10 million for a brownstone, if somebody's selling, which they're not. But in 1967, most of those brownstones were abandoned. They had cinder blocks in the window with an X spray painted on it, right, for the wrecking ball. So all my friends lived in Wyckoff Projects or Gowanus Projects, and I'm right between the two. I'm one block between Nevins and Bond of row houses, but like I said, they were mostly abandoned. The ones that were occupied were like rooming houses, single room occupancy, mostly single, older, alcoholic Puerto Rican men living by themselves, So it wasn't an attractive neighborhood back then. And I think that the kind of like how Detroit was recently, the city would give you a building for $1 if you could bring it up to code and do the work. My father being a carpenter, that's what he did. I think he paid the back taxes. So
nice. Okay.
We were constantly living in a state of construction. It was never finished. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I thought my friends who lived in the projects were rich because their house had an elevator and it was clean. They had a big color TV. I was like, wow, we're the poorest cats in the neighborhood,
Okay. Now, just for those that are watching, we're talking Brooklyn.
Downtown Brooklyn. Right near Fulton Street Shopping Center. On the other side is Fort Greene. Behind us is Red Hook. But you're also in between two very affluent neighborhoods, Park Slope and Brooklyn Heights. And after Brooklyn Heights is the water, and then you're in Manhattan. So we could walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. It's not like we were isolated. It was a very mixed area. You could walk to nice neighborhoods. You could, if you lived in like East New York, Brownsville, that's another story, or parts of the Bronx. But to me, it was a little like Harlem in that we had poor, we had rich, we had jazz musicians and artists, and we had hood shit, and but we could walk to the wealthy part of town. Just like in Harlem, you go a few blocks south, you know what I mean, and it's a whole nother world.
Right.
But back then, the neighborhoods were very, you know, you talked about it. Primo and Guru moving from, that was unheard of. You know, after them, then came Common and Erica Badu, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, it's cool to move to Fort Greene. Nobody's gonna murder me.
Right.
Look, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's Wendy from Wisconsin out there, and you know.
Yeah. We
From
talked about
Delaware.
that. We talked about that with you know, we had the pleasure of having Power Rule on, and you know, he mentioned that as well. So tell us a little bit about growing up, you know, as a teenager. You know, what were you dealing with? What were you seeing? What led up to you even getting into hip hop?
That would have to go long before I'm a teenager. I was pretty much retired by the time I hit my. What did Rakim say? I was a fiend before I became a teen, right?
Okay.
So I'm talking like, you know, like 8, 9 years old during the bicentennial, 1976. I'm entranced with graffiti. You know, there wasn't really. I hadn't heard the term hip hop yet. The music that we listened to then was mostly funk and disco and whatever was popular on the radio. You know, it was beginning to sound like hip hop. Some of it, the dances were coming into play. You know, the Jackson 5 had the robot, automatic, systematic,
Yeah.
and things were starting to get a little funky, but graffiti was already 10 years deep. It was already full blown, and that's what I was entranced with. Go ahead.
So stop right there for 1 second. So, because this is interesting that you're saying this, because I always hear this conversation about Graf, hip hop, Graf being a part of hip hop, not being a part, you know, that whole conversation. So I'm glad you kind of touched on that. So you're talking very early on, before the concept of or the term hip hop was even introduced yet.
It wasn't around my neighborhood and my consciousness. What was going on somewhere else, I might not have been aware of yet. You understand?
Right.
So any culture has a lot of influences. It doesn't just pop up out of nowhere, right? The chicken or the egg. Well, maybe there was a bunch of chickens that looked kind of like dinosaurs, and then they evolved into chickens, right? So people were writing graffiti before hip hop, but people were also dancing before hip hop. They were just doing it different. People were DJing. There were DJs on the radio. There were DJs in the club, right? People were even rapping. People were MCing, right? You know, people were saying little rhymes to the beat.
Right.
It just, when it all coalesced and it became a way of doing things, not just what you did, but how you did it.
Right.
Certain style. It's like basketball. I think about basketball. Basketball was invented by an Irish dude in Boston somewhere, right? But when it got to New York, they put a certain funk
flavor
that changed the fucking game. So you could say, yeah, there was basketball before, but they didn't dunk. You know what I'm saying? They didn't break your ankle. They didn't. So was it really basketball, or was it a proto, you know, something lesser than that had yet to fully mature?
Right. Okay.
You mentioned 76. Can you take us back to the Blackout of 77?
Clear as day. July the 13th. I believe I was watching Starsky and Hutch, or one of them shows I was entranced with. Now understand, we had very little bread. I mean, everyone was poor at that time, but my family particularly. So there was one black and white TV, and I had it had a coat hanger for an antenna with tinfoil on the top, and I had to be physically touching it to see the picture so the lines wouldn't move, right? And there was a pair of needle nose pliers you used to turn the channel, and it was a big giant like wooden cabinet. It looked like the dresser you keep your clothes in, right? And it went out. It went dead. the lights went dead. So I thought, oh, we fucking blew the fuse. As a little kid, I was used to that. Like I said, my father is repairing a brownstone that's been abandoned. So shit was always on the fritz, right? So I go to yell, yo, the shit went, and I realize the window is dark, the street light went, everything is dark. And I go to the window because, you know, July, we don't have air conditioning. The windows are wide open. I look out. I'm a little kid, man, but I can see. If you lived where I lived at that time, there were no skyscrapers. They've since built a lot of skyscrapers in downtown Brooklyn. If you're familiar with Atlantic Barclay, there was only one tall building. That's called the Williamsburg Savings Bank. It looked like a penis with a clock on all four.
Right. Yeah.
Everything else, 4 or 5 stories max. So you could see Manhattan. You could see the skyscrapers across the tops of the other brownstones, and everything was out. I'd never seen the city look like that. All of a sudden you could see stars and shit. So it was like real quiet for a minute, and then the purge. All hell broke loose because where I live is on the corner of Nevins, right? The projects is right behind me, Wyckoff Gardens. But right up Nevins, I'm looking out my window now, is Fulton Street, Livingston Street, where all the shopping is. Siemens Furniture is on the corner. They have plate glass windows. Inside those windows is a whole fake living room, right? And people are just wrecking everything. Boom. And they're running back down Nevins with couches on their back and TVs, and everybody's getting paid. Right. It's like free for all, man. And I remember Mr. Rodriguez, because I said I lived on the corner, but I don't really live on the corner. I'm the first regular brownstone. There's a bodega on the corner where the payphone is, Mr. Rodriguez Bodega. So he comes out with the shotgun, sets up a table selling candles, batteries, milk, and flashlights. Drops his gate, boom, him and his son are out there, clack, clack, Wild, Wild West. And now they're charging $15, $20 for a candle, you know what I mean? So everybody is just caking off. And it felt like a little frightening, but also exciting, like freedom, like chaos, right? Because there was already no police at that time. You're talking about the city was bankrupt. A lot like Detroit or some of these cities now, like what Europe is actually going through. I was just in Italy, and you know they fend for self. You can't call the cops because they won't come. So there was no budget for these kind of things. And then once the lights went out, forget about it. It was 3 days, man. Every shop got wrecked. They pulled the gates, or the jewelry stores went first, then the clothing. I mean, you got to understand, the Wiz, Beat Street, all these record stores that sell DJ equipment, that sell expensive turntables, amps, speakers, mixers, they're right in my neighborhood. So cats came up because back then, you know, now you could probably DJ a whole party right off of this. But back then, to have equipment, not only was it crazy expensive, you could make loot with that. You could be a mobile sound system, throw parties, right? That was, so it changed the game, man. And I live right across the street from PS38, which was my grade school, but it also had a schoolyard where they used to throw jams. And after the blackout, all of a sudden there was brand new equipment. Everybody was dressed, fly, dipped. I mean, my man Pito, who lived down the block, he had at that time, and maybe nobody's old enough to relate to this, there was a pants called gabardines with the pleat. They were like shark skins, but they, you know, back then it was real tight around your ass and then bell bottom. Yeah. Out. So he had these joints that were gray with burgundy inside the pleat where it opened up, right? Mm-hmm. That was the real fly shit, except it didn't fit him. It was like for a grown man, and he was rocking it anyway. He had, you know, tied up the waist and put safety pins or whatever he had to do. So everybody came up. Everybody came up in the neighborhood. So it was a party. As soon as the power came back on, it was boom. And I remember the jam that they threw in PS38 right after the blackout. And because my young mind, you know, I'm still a little small to go outside by myself, but I see it all out the window, right? And I know cats who, you know, their older brothers are out there. I have an older brother, 4 years older than myself. So I'm on the verge. I'm like snooping around the edges, right? So I'm wondering what kind of, after this 3 days of chaos and mayhem, and people were running with torches. They took the Sunday paper and set it on fire. It was like it was like a horror movie, like Frankenstein's monster out there. Cars were burning, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking, after all this, what kind of music are they gonna play? They're setting up the speakers, right? They plug into the lamppost and everything goes dark. When they turn it up, it drains the power, right? And I'm thinking it's gonna be some angry, frightening music. You know what came on? Love is the message.
Okay. Look at that. Yeah. Wow.
Everybody's rocking in peace, man.
Wow.
So something good came out of all
Came
that
out.
chaos, man. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Dudes were already thinking how to make something, not only how to make something out of nothing, because everybody's looking to come up, right? But how to make something beautiful, something positive out of a city that, now you have to understand, in 1977, the federal government had told, we asked Ford, president after Nixon, right? He wasn't even elected. He just, because Nixon had to resign, he just stepped up. So the city asked the government for a bailout, and the newspaper said, Ford to city, drop dead. So basically, the federal government had said, fuck New York, you can slide right into the sea.
Wow.
Earn. We don't care. Nobody's coming to save you. So cats had to do for themselves, right? So like a PS38 schoolyard where I go, there was no, you know, now it's beautiful. They got AstroTurf and soccer nets and shit. Back then, it looked like a prison yard. 30-foot chain link fence, right?
Right.
And broken glass everywhere. There's 2 bent rims with no net and a handball wall. And everything is gray and broken and falling apart. So when kids would take it on themselves in the middle of the night to come paint that handball court, I remember coming to school Monday, and I'm talking about a little kid now. This is before 76, before 77. I'm talking about first grade, pre-K, shit like that. Mm-hmm. You see the handball court, there's Mickey Mouse and colors, and it's like, wow. You think it was the community improvement program, but it was little kids stealing spray paint and taking it on themselves to beautify their surroundings with no corporate backing, no sponsorship, no money, no nada. You know what I mean? Just pure willpower. You know? So that's the spirit that I came up in. And
I say that to Sincere. I think I've told him a couple of times about being a young kid. I mean, I'm talking about early 80, like 79, 80, 81, somewhere around that time, being on a subway platform, you know, and a train pulling up with a huge, you know, piece or certain characters. And as a kid, you're familiar with seeing, you know, whether a coloring book or cartoons, and like you see this huge thing come up in front of you. It was like you were just at awe, you know what I mean? And you wanted to go home and like try color or that was.
But we didn't have any reference. See, that's the difference. Today, people can go on here. They got books, movies, so they can perfectly trace.
Yeah.
A Lee Fabulous 5 car. We just saw it go by
Swoop and
quickly,
try to
and you try
imitate.
to remember the impression, the feeling it gave you. So when you got home, you weren't biting, you weren't copying, you were just vibing,
Yeah,
right?
you were trying to create something that would look, maybe not even similar, but just something that you could look at to be
It
like,
felt similar. Yeah,
right,
they
right,
had that same energy, that same excitement, man, because that's what people don't understand about early hip hop or whatever you want to call it. Because first we just called it rocking. Yo, they're rocking in the
right.
park. Yo, he's rocking the mic. Yo, they're rocking on the turntables, whatever it was. Um, Whatever you call it, it had a certain energy. There was a little danger to it, a little excitement, but it was
Mhm.
really love and it was really powerful. And you knew it was untamed and wild. And, it's like you're at a party and it's letting you rock, but it could flip on you at any moment,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? It's like being in a small ship at sea. The ocean is
Right,
beautiful, the waves rock, but if that motherfucker wanted to, he could just swallow you, right?
right, right.
You have to respect the power of it. And that's what got lost. See, when you can sit at home and find hip hop. Oh, I could find graffiti right now from all over the world. I could see a whole car that they're painting live in Australia. And that's great,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
it doesn't have the same feeling to me.
Nah, nah, nah.
Access, see, everybody didn't know about it. And everybody, even those who knew about it, they didn't they weren't allowed access. You had to have somebody vouch for you, take you under the wing, accept you into the inner circle. Say, yo, Shorty's with me. You
Hmm.
understand? That's my student. That's my son Dula. He's down with the crew. And then you might be allowed to carry the records for somebody or to shake their cans or to watch their back while they painted the whole train, right? You had to apprentice. Now things come too easily, man. And I'm not saying that people should have to go to jail and bleed for this like I did, but if something comes too easy, you don't respect it.
Right, right, right. You don't appreciate it as the
Yeah,
same either.
easy come, easy go. So
Yeah.
I have students now. I teach a graffiti class, right? And they know everything. If you tell them something they don't know, they go like this and oh yeah, Donnie White, he was born on this day and that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you can't surprise them, you can't shock them,
Right.
and because they learn it all so fast, then they're done. They're on to the next.
Mm.
And it's like, my man, you haven't even scratched the surface, right? You got all
Right,
the
right, right.
information and none of the experience.
Mm.
Right.
So you said that by the time you turned, into your teens that you were almost pretty much like retired. So
Yeah.
explain a little bit about your time writing before you became a teen. When did you come into yourself? Like what, I'm sure you probably started tagging or messing around with names, or did you know, right away what you were gonna start tagging?
No, no,
Just
I went through a million names, man.
yeah,
I would get bored with them quickly because uh, I was a letter guy. I was a style guy. Some guys, they're just about bombing, right? Getting their name up as much as possible, fame. That wasn't me. I wanted to be the guy that my shit was nicer than yours. You know what I mean? It's like Sade. She might drop a record only every 10 years, but when she does, people gonna check for it, right?
right, right, right.
So somebody else got 15 albums this year and you don't even know that half of them, right?
Mm.
So I grew up seeing a lot of guys in Brooklyn and Queens especially who bombed with two-letter throw-ups. Just quick, fast throw-ups. And that's a beautiful art too, but it became boring to me. I mastered that quickly. I felt I mastered it. I said, there's no
Mm.
challenge here. I'd see these other cats who could do complex, wild styles with characters and 3D. And I said, oh, now that's something that I would really like to reach that level. So that was the lane that I saw for myself. And because I wanted to be a letter guy, I wanted different combinations, and you have to understand by this time, 1979 or so, all the good names are taken. Right?
Right.
So I came up with KEO. It doesn't even mean anything. It's just a combination of letters that nobody was using at that time.
Okay.
So I started with one of the first names I bombed with was Dose, DOSE.
Okay.
And it turned out there was another Dose, right? My
Right.
government name, Blake, that's what my mother named me. I start
There
writing
was
that. There was
another
already
Blake.
a Blake.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And the older cats who mentored me, they were like, you can't write that. There's already a Blake. I was like, but that's my name. And they don't
It
care.
doesn't
They'll
matter.
bust
Yeah.
your ass. I get shook, you know?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
would switch it up. And because I was writing Blake 1, BLAKEO and
Okay.
E, I just took the KEO off the end, the KE from the end of the Blake and the O from the end of the beginning of the one. And, you know, I said, I would show my man, you might even know this cat. He used to write Sake. He went on to manage third base and produce
Oh
KMD's first album and
yeah.
OC's first album and Nas' first album. Anyway, Mark was a
Yeah.
year or two older than me, played basketball in Flatbush.
Okay.
And he was writing Sake. So I would show him different names I had come up with. Yo, anybody writes this? And he'd be like, yup. Go back to the drawing board. Yo, what about this? This is fresh. He'd be like, nah, they got that already. So just finding something original. You understand? Because back then, now there might be 30 Keos. Some of them follow me on Instagram.
Really?
Other kids writing my name and they're following me
They
and
don't
writing
even.
my shit. And I'm like, in my day, that would have been a problem.
Yeah.
When you met that guy, now I don't care about a graffiti name. I'm not fighting. Like, you know, I don't give a shit.
Right.
Hey, whatever you want, have a ball. But at that time, it was a very small circle. And they were going to find you. You would hear about if a cat from the Bronx or Queens, yo, he's looking for you. Without the internet, without cell phones, without any media, the word got around.
Yeah.
And it was a small circle. There were only X amount of kids writing at that time. You know what I mean? Now it's worldwide. So I had one kid tell me, "Yo, but I'm the Los Angeles Keo." I said, "My man, how old are you?" He told me. I said, "I was already the Los Angeles Keo before
Right.
you. I was out there 87, 88 smashing shit." Oh, I wasn't even born.
Well, that's the whole
So you
point.
can't be the LA Key. I am the Keo. I claim that one. So, you know, I tell kids, man, do what you like, but you're never gonna really you ain't gonna go platinum like that. You have to get an original name. You understand? But I
Right.
feel that way about a lot of things. Like when R. Kelly came out and he said he's the R, I said, well, there's already the R. That's
Yeah.
Rakim Allah.
Right.
I think he already claimed that. You know what I mean? Now they got another Rakim. It's like a reggaeton artist. And it's
Oh
okay.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
Google Rakim, he
It
comes
comes
up
up.
first.
Yeah. That happens to me sometimes.
He got more hits than the real Rakim.
Yeah.
So all the rules that I grew up with, they went out the window. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Times change. Things evolve. You understand?
Right.
Yeah.
I can't be a grumpy old man forever, you know?
At the age of 15, you entered your first art gallery with some icons. Take us back to that moment and what it meant to you to be surrounded by those guys.
I didn't realize, you know, I'm a young kid, so and I'm getting high all the goddamn time. You have to understand, when I say I'm a young kid, I'm smoking dust, I'm smoking weed, I'm drinking 40s all day, every day. So I don't even care about a whole lot of shit. My reality is different from. So people now talk about, oh, you were with Keith Haring and Basquiat and man, Grace Jones and fucking Debbie Harry from Blondie used to walk in that room too, and Madonna was there, and I didn't give a fuck. Now, when I met Slave from the Fabulous Five, I was like, oh shit, yo, respect. Will you sign my black book? I was starstruck about that, but I just had a different set of standards, you know. I didn't
Right.
care about what. If you live in New York and you're running around Manhattan, you're gonna see, you know. I remember one day my boys beat up Matt Dillon over there by Washington Square Park. You know, that was a regular thing. You would see stars or whatever.
Yo, that's so funny. You mentioned him, man. One time, I used to live in Manhattan on uh, IPN, man. It's right around the corner from BMCC College. You know
Way
what?
downtown.
Yeah. So there's a basketball court there, and Matt Dillon was there one time shooting around. And I remember we looking like, yo, and you know, it was like we weren't sure because we're like, why would he be here? But it was him. So it's
He's
like, yeah,
a downtown kid, so you would see all these people. That was nothing.
yeah.
I met Muhammad Ali when I was a little kid, man. We
Oh,
had him. Me and my brother had a $5 bill between us, and that was like our life savings. You had to do what do you call that? Chores to get allowance and save it up, right?
right.
And that was the only piece of paper my brother had, so he had Muhammad Ali sign it. And then about a week later, we went and bought fucking candy and shit with this $5 bill.
Oh wow.
Because our priorities were different, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, we didn't know what we had.
Yeah.
So if you ask me now, wow, what was it like to be in the fun gallery with Keith Haring and Dondi and Ramel Z and Futura? I'm like, yo, it was another day in New York. That was regular shit. That's what we did. And I didn't, I'll be honest with you, and this may not be popular, and if it offends anyone, I'm sorry, but this is my honest where I was as a kid. Some of those guys were homosexuals, and at that time, see, it was funny. We didn't care if you were black, white, Spanish, Asian, Muslim, Jewish, but you couldn't be a faggot and hang out with us. You understand? We had our own prejudices. It wasn't all kumbaya. Even though my crew was multicultural and we didn't give a shit about that. In fact, we would snap on each other's ethnicities like it was a joke, and then we had each other's back. It was love.
Right.
But the gay shit, we didn't really rock with that. So when there were certain cats who were what they would today call a street artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
They tried to attach themselves to the graffiti movement. Now you have to understand that graffiti at that time was primarily kids, 14, 15. So you got these grown-ass gay men hanging around a bunch of little kids, and that shit didn't really sit right with me. I didn't, I was already, because I was a latchkey kid. I'd been running the streets. I knew about chicken hawks. I knew about, we used to go to the Deuce and sneak into movie theaters, and you knew what a gay dude was, and that wasn't my thing. I didn't rock with you. Now some of the graffiti kids were all right with them and rocked with them. And it wasn't just homosexuals. There were women who were preying on young kids too there. So anytime you have a place where young kids are going to congregate, unfortunately, it may attract predators, right? Whether that's a basketball team or the Boy Scouts or some hip hop shit, because it was a bunch of young kids who probably had no parents at home, nobody looking out for them, right? So they were trying to trap some of these kids, man, and I didn't really vibe with that. So I left that scene because of my own fears and my own prejudices. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Brooklyn, and I was basically telling the cats on my block, like, yo, that's some homo shit. I'm not going back there. Now, do I think that way and feel that way today as a grown man? No. But when you're a kid, man,
time back then,
yeah, and you have to, as a street kid in New York, you have to be aware of these things and protect yourself from all kinds of predators. Stick up kids. It's not just the chicken hawks. The police are out to body snatch you. There's a million dangers, right? And I thought that I was hip to all of them, so I wasn't going to go that route. I saw some of these kids. You had these older artists. Oh yeah, I'll get you a show, I'll get you bone, getting them drunk, and you know what I'm saying? It just the vibe didn't seem right to me.
Mm.
I didn't want to be an art star that bad. I
Right, right,
walked
right,
away
right,
from that shit.
right. So,
And
uh-huh.
if that offends anyone, I apologize. That's just my honest experience. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It
Yeah,
just
yeah.
what it
But you can
was.
only speak from what from your eyes and what you experience. There's
Yeah,
nothing
and I'm
wrong with
not gonna
that.
clean it up for anyone either.
Right, right,
Right.
right. So at what point does the X-Men come into play for you? At what point do you get down with the X-Men? And talk a little bit about that crew and what the X-Men consist of.
So there was a school in Fort Greene called Brooklyn Tech. Now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is a magnet school, meaning kids from every borough. It's a public school, but the
Hmm.
best and the brightest, you have to take a test to get in. But it's
Hmm.
in my neighborhood. So I couldn't get into that school. Your academics had to be on point. But 1979 to 1980, my man Tattoo, Ralph, who lived on Nevin Street, he went to Brooklyn Tech. He met another cat from Queens going there from Jackson Heights, from 82nd Street, the Rousseau, SOE, and they formed a little crew. And they went through a lot of different names, but basically, the inspiration was an older crew from Brooklyn called the X Vandals. And the X Vandals was one of the original graffiti crews from 1972. And they had started at Erasmus High School, right?
Okay.
And Crown Heights and Flatbush, and it spread out. It became all city. But what we admired about these cats, because they were already a generation ahead of us, right?
Okay.
This is almost 10 years later, is that they put their own ego aside and they just pushed the crew. So dudes are just right, ex Vandals, big. And then if there was time, they put their signature, Dino Nod, Wicked Gary, right? So they put the crew before their own ego. And we wanted X-Men to be something like that.
Okay.
And so they were called the X Vandals, which stood for the experienced Vandals, right? And we called ourselves the X-Men because it sounded cool. It had the X. And we developed a logo style with the arrow on the end,
Okay.
right? The end is pointing north with an arrow.
Gotcha.
And everybody was encouraged to write the same, almost like a logo. You
Okay.
understand? Get it
Okay.
around. And we specifically targeted certain spots. It's like years later, I would see these street teams, with the snipes, like that Doomsday poster behind you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They would put it up around certain areas where they knew cats would congregate.
Uh,
So we strategically hit like the dust spots, 116, 125th, right? Outside the club, 40 deuce. We, with that same, always flat black with a fat cap, the arrow on the end, it became
so
a
it was like a
brand.
brand. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Right.
So cats immediately, yo, who are the X-Men? Then we had two other cats called Tess and DJ No. And they worked in a printing shop. So they came up with the idea. Now everybody does it, stickers and wheat paste. They were really the first graffiti artists. And maybe somebody else could lay claim to that, but I never saw anyone before them. To print up, it said DJ No, Tess, X-Men, Tess Never Fest. Who is DJ No? They made these, like right now, there's a kid called BNE. And I'm
Okay.
sure you've seen his stickers because he's all over the world. Just block letters.
Right,
BN
right.
Helvetica, Sans Serif, boom. So Tess and No started doing this so hard body that it made the newspaper. People, what does it mean? Who is it?
Yeah.
It was like a mystery. Then it was an issue of Spider-Man where they drew into the background, like Spidey is swinging through the city, and there's the sticker, X-Men, DJ
Oh, wow.
No, Tess Never Fest, right? So it became a real phenomenon. And it was a camaraderie. By 83 or 4, we had 300 members. We had females down. We had dudes who were dancers, and dudes who were DJs, and dudes who were MCs, and dudes who were just leg breakers. They didn't even write graffiti. You know what I mean? It was a real
So it was a
cultural
real crew. Yeah.
yeah. And we had
Yeah.
divisions and different neighborhoods, and we would throw parties and get-togethers. We even had our own brand of dust at one time,
What?
called Double Vision. So we would go uptown and cop the liquid, which came in a little airplane bottle, a little Bacardi
Right.
bottle like that.
Okay.
And we would pour it over the mint leaves and bag it up and cut it up. And just being around it, you're breathing it, you're getting high. And my man, Tattoo had rented a little space on Nevins by Livingston where we would throw parties. We would throw jams, and you charge like $1.50, ladies free before. You know what I mean? It's not a real money-making operation. It's more for fun. But we would bag up the Double Vision, and we would stamp it, Double Vision, in the DJ booth, which was one of those elevated DJ booths. You know what I mean?
Right.
Looking down on the dance floor. So it was tiny, and you're just breathing these fumes. So we were always twisted, man. What did my man Soul call it? Bumbazooted. We were bumbazooted. I don't recommend that, by the way. Please, kids, do not smoke dust.
No. We're not promoting that.
Not at all. I drink water now. That's as wet as I can be.